Sooner or later, there is a strong chance that you will hear about Big Bronson Reed. Not only does his name exude toughness, but he could also be one of the next big stars in WWE. He caused a tsunami of destruction in modern Nitro. It's fair to say this, as it was with his devastating tsunami move that he destroyed Seth Rollins and R-Truth. He also massacred The Miz and Braun Strowman, and one wonders where the Australian would stop, who even won the Battle Royale in honor of André the Giant. In April 2024, I don't know what you think about it, but personally, I see a great future in him, provided that he is used properly, of course. I even think that he is one of those whom WWE should give a big push to as soon as possible to build a new star. But why am I so convinced of all this? Make yourself comfortable, we're going to talk about it together, and if you're not a fan of Bronson by the end of the video, you have the right to give me a tsunami.
You are in the wrestling paradise.
Why do I think Big Bronson Reed has enormous potential? Let's go! So the first reason I believe that Big Bronson Reed should be heavily promoted and why he has everything it takes to be one of the next big stars of WWE is, of course, his larger-than-life physique. Hold on,
He is 6 feet tall,
which isn't that impressive, but especially,
330 pounds.
can you even imagine I want to say the powerhouse that this represents? And that's a bit of his uniqueness. I want to say it's that generally, big men, because that's what he is. For those who are not familiar with all the big men in WWE, you should know that these are impressive wrestlers. There used to be many more of them than there are today. It was much more common. I think of wrestlers like the Great Khali, Umaga, Big Daddy V, that kind of character that when you see them, well, especially when, like me, when you're younger, you see this on your television, you're glued to it, you're impressed, you go, wow, what is this phenomenon? What is this character? This is something we also love to experience sometimes as wrestling fans, and it's becoming increasingly rare. And indeed, Big Bronson Reed is one of those characters. He is part of that lineage of big men, because with a physique like that, I have to say, he's not someone you run into on the street every day. And that's one of his great qualities, I think. It's something that deserves to be preserved. And for me, just because he is, frankly, isn't he the only one today who still has that larger-than-life quality? Because it's true that we could. So if we take stock today and look at the current wrestlers, they still have that intimidating aspect. That was, for example, one of the great qualities of André the Giant. Well, this goes back a long time. He might even be one of the very first big men. But during the era of Hulk Hogan, you had them regularly. In fact, the mechanics at the time were that you had the superhero babyface like Hulk Hogan, and you needed monster heels, big men. Because it's true that big men are often monster heels, against whom the superhero had to measure up. So it's true that today, in our time, we are less often in a logic like that, where you have the superhero against the big monster. That's true. Well, we could still find, like a Brock Lesnar, for example. Brock Lesnar is someone intimidating and impressive, not necessarily super tall or anything, and it's true that he is shorter than the Great Khali, for example. But well, come on, we could consider that he is part of it. But it's true that if you take a step back, there are really very few. There was Omos in recent years. Well, Omos. We're going to talk about that later, so hang on. I think there are traps that must absolutely be avoided with Big Bronson Reed. They did not manage to avoid this for Omos, and that's a shame because Omos, while he can certainly be clumsy, had the potential. But what I want to say above all, as the first reason why he deserves to be highlighted, is that he has a quality that we no longer have today. It's true, we must acknowledge it. While there are wrestlers who have other qualities, I am the first to acknowledge that guys like Seth Rollins, for example, and Sami Zayn, among others, are excellent, technically in the ring. It's clear that they know how to do everything. They can perform spectacular moves, they can be dynamic, they are quick, they truly have skills in the ring. On the other hand, the aspect is that I walk down the street and when people look at me, they go, wow, what is this? Well, there aren't many today, I want to say, but Big Bronson Reed is one of them, and that's my first reason, but there are others, so stay tuned. In my opinion, another reason why I really like Big Bronson Reed is that I love this name. It has a nice ring to it. It really sounds like a powerhouse. I don't know what you think, but Big Bronson Reed, honestly, that name. Plus, I love when he adds big before someone's name. It fits with the big man aspect, obviously. But what also makes this Big Bronson Reed great is that he is not just visually intimidating. So it's clear that this is one of his great strengths. but he knows how to do things in the ring. This has not always been the case for other big men. There are some who knew how to do it. By the way, I take this opportunity to say that in this regard, Umaga was perhaps the best of all. By the way, with Big Bronson Reed, they have a bit of this common point of being. So, Big Bronson Reed, he is Australian, but there is still this somewhat Pacific side to him. I wonder if, at some point, Big Bronson Reed will be, in one way or another, linked to the bloodline. We'll see. But what does he have in common with Umaga? And what differentiates him, for example, from the great Kali or Omos? Despite his physique and massive build, he knows how to perform the tsunami, the move with which he devastated Seth Rollins. Can you imagine it? In fact, it's called the tsunami, but we could say it's, well, since we're talking about Umaga, it's a bit like Umaga's splash. It's a splash, you see. He goes to the top rope. He throws himself with all his body onto the wrestler who is lying in the middle of the ring. And it's certain that with his build, you feel like a tsunami is coming at the guy. By the way, I love the name of that move. It really fits like a glove because you feel like a giant wave. Big Bronson Reed is coming in and is going to massacre the guy who is on the ground. He also knows how to do it, as he did on September 16th, when he threw someone from the audience to launch them at Braun Strowman, a sort of human missile. So it's something he does, and I find it absolutely great, but he also knows how to do, well, I mean, in his in-ring work, there's also the Death Valley driver, which is a sort of mix between, let's say, Brock Lesnar's F5 and the drop, and he also shouts he is all this to say that he is not at all, let's say, not only expressionless, or soft, or clumsy, or boring in the ring. And it's a quality. He stands out from many big men, and just for all that, for me, he deserves to be highlighted. And we will immediately talk about how I would like WWE to make use of him. Because right now we are facing a real issue. As much as I believe strongly in Big Bronson Reed for everything I just mentioned, he truly has many qualities. But everything is conditioned. In the coming years, and even in the coming months, everything depends on the booking that Triple H will do for him, how he will utilize him. Because right now, what we notice is that Big Bronson Reed, in late summer 2024, early autumn 2024, was originally supposed to participate in a qualifying match to ultimately have an opportunity for the Intercontinental title, but due to health reasons, he had to cancel. And it seems that this has put him in an intense rage. Overall, regarding Big Bronson Reed, we can say that he massacred Braun Strowman, but essentially, his specialty is to take out guys to get noticed. In his promos and speeches, where he is actually quite good, another thing that sets him apart from other big men is that he is not just about appearance, look, or size. He can also be intense on the mic. And so, in his speech, he recently stated that he believes he deserves much more recognition, that he is one of the best currently, and basically, if he is not given what he considers deserved, he will go provoke it himself. It's a posture that, well, isn't super original, but it's simple and effective, I would say. So that's a bit of his current booking. He destroys everyone because he wants to assert himself, he wants to make a name for himself to get noticed. But, well, all of this has its time, if you understand what I mean. All of this is destined to last a few weeks, but more consistency is still needed. I find that what WWE has on its hands these days is that it really needs more identity. So it's true that he can ride this wave of rage and hatred, a bit like Mark Henry did in 2011 with his Hall of Pain. Basically, this side, one might almost want to call it a revenge, a vengeance from a big man who is fed up with being more or less disrespected and who is taking out everyone. Is it possible to do that? Doesn't Big Brown Sundry need a bit more identity than that? However, what kind of identity can we give him? This is what is in WWE's hands right now. But on the other hand, there is a good way to book it already. And that's really not complicated at all. Just hold on. In my opinion, he simply needs to be given a series of victories to establish an invincibility. I think you would agree with me that for someone to be taken seriously and to truly contend for a significant push, it is essential that we do not see them lose. We want to see him string together victories, ideally causing destruction as well, and if possible, doing so in a clean manner. Because, as you will see shortly, I will share some of my concerns for Bronson Reed, which is that we should not do a 50-50 booking with him and we should also avoid making his victories feel insignificant. So for the moment, he has destroyed several wrestlers, which is good. It gives him a really intimidating aura. However, he must not start winning matches in a, let's say, questionable manner, as is often the case with the Islands. That's one of my concerns, but if he manages to give him a legitimate series of invincibility, then we can project and imagine that after some time, why couldn't Big Bronson Reed be? Because originally he was supposed to be in the running for that title. Why couldn't he be the next Intercontinental Champion, for example? It would suit him well. And it's typically an interim title while waiting for something better. This could further enhance his credibility. Personally, I vote for that. I hope it will be the case, but in any case, it's a very good scenario. At least it could suit him very well. But above all, it must not stop there. He should ideally have a long reign. Recently, WWE has proven that they are capable of booking in this manner. I want to remind everyone that Gunther, I really like Gunther. I find that in the Monday Night Raw roster, he is one of the best, one of the most credible, one of the most legitimate, and on top of that, he dresses classy. He truly represents his title and has a genuine desire to be the face of WWE, or at least one of the faces, and that is to his credit. Well done, Gunther. By the way, I want to remind everyone that not so long ago, he was called Walter, which some people thought was lame, but I feel like everyone has gotten used to Gunther. You tell me what you think in the comments, but I feel like today it seems completely normal for him to be called Gunther, whereas not so long ago, including myself, we were a bit annoyed by this new name that came out of nowhere. In short, they have proven, WWE, with Gunther, that they are capable of giving a very long reign to a guy. The proof is that Gunther has been Intercontinental Champion for over 600 days. Can you even imagine how much of a launching pad it has been? A springboard for Gunther? So, why not do the same with Big Bronson Reed? I think a long reign could do him a lot of good, but what he really needs is to win a major match. This happens often, so traditionally, in the past, when there were big men like that, they really needed a significant victory against a big name to truly and definitively reach the next level. Umaga, for example, let's make a comparison with him while we're at it. Umaga, he had a victory, particularly in his first year in 2006, where he had several notable wins against Triple H, Shawn Michaels, and even John Cena, which ultimately led to a rivalry with John Cena. And that's the whole danger of a big man. If he has a streak of invincibility for too long, he will eventually be fed to a babyface. We don't have John Cena today, by the way. Or do we? What if, in 2025, Big Bronson Reed was one of John Cena's opponents, and why not one of the last ones to truly be the one who definitively puts John Cena out of action for good? What if he were John Cena's last opponent? That would certainly be quite a legacy for Big Bronson Reed. In any case, you understand, I think he needs a strong and prominent rivalry. So we might also find maybe that's what you want to see. I do too, frankly. I'm also curious to see what it could turn out to be. However, what I would like the WWE not to do with him above all is to integrate him into a faction. Personally, it drives me up the wall that there are too many teams in general everywhere, especially on Raw. Especially on Raw, there are too many teams. There are really too many teams. There are hardly any wrestlers who are not part of a faction, either directly or through alliances. Anyway, and I think that Big Bronson Reed should maintain that somewhat lone wolf, untamed side, which does not associate with others. That's very good. It's what you need for a wild beast anyway. And so, this is to be avoided. Why not be the henchman of someone? It's true. Why not, even though, as I said, I find he has intensity on the mic, why not give him a manager? To speak for him, give him someone who speaks for him, well, spontaneously. A name that comes to mind would be MVP. There was the MVP experience with Omos. I think we can say, unless there is a huge turnaround, that it is unfortunately a failed experience. However, he could have, but, well, why not, for example, have MVP as Big Bronson Reed's manager today? But, well, that's projecting even further. But above all, that's my next point. I would really like WWE to avoid certain mistakes at all costs. What a shame, Keith Lee. Personally, I was already dreaming, I was already salivating at the thought of a potential rivalry. Keith Lee against Brock Lesnar, Keith Lee against Roman Reigns. Keith Lee was well received by everyone, yet they messed everything up. And that's a real shame. Back in the NXT days, he was great. All they had to do was replicate what he was like in NXT, and it would have been a success. So, on one hand, I think now it's Triple H who manages everything creative. So, especially since Big Bronson Reed originally comes from NXT, I think he would have less of this obsession to want to break everything and rebuild from scratch. At the moment, especially since he is already in the main restaurant, it would make no sense to break everything now. So I still hope that he doesn't end up in a scenario like Keith Lee, where we don't know what identity to give him, where we try a lot of things and in the end, it leads to nothing. On the other hand, where I am a bit worried is that Big Bronson Reed is not really the type that Triple H seems to favor. It's true that Triple H, as we know, has really liked and still likes all those who come from NXT like Sami Zayn and others who are often, let's say, physically athletic guys who know how to perform many moves, who are sometimes very acrobatic and who are generally not too heavy, not like Big Bronson Reed. And so, even if I am just asking to be contradicted, and I hope this will be an exception, this Big Bronson Reed, let's just say that his profile, it may not quite align with what Triple H likes to highlight, but I could be mistaken. Another concern is that he is already 36 years old. And even if someone could tell me, well, yeah, that doesn't change the fact that he can still have at least 4 or 5 more years at the top of his game. Often, it's around that age that wrestlers really hit their prime. So, what is certain is that one shouldn't linger too long with Hill, Watson, Reed. If the WWE decides to push him, it needs to happen soon. I believe it should happen by the end of 2025. That's it. But anyway, all this to say that I truly hope with all my heart that WWE will know how to make good use of him and won't do a 50-50 booking with a win, a loss, a win, a loss. There you go. That's just too common. We must avoid that at all costs. And it is also important that what Big Bronson Reed does in the ring is impactful and not easily forgotten. I find that we are currently heading in a good direction with the absolutely unpredictable and brilliant Caro scene, especially with Braun Strowman on Raw on September 16th, which was fantastic. That's a scene that won't be forgotten. For me, it was the best segment of this Monday Night Raw. I hope they continue in this vein, and if they do, if they keep delivering, I could also place in the same category his radical destruction of Seth Rollins. If he continues on this path with impactful scenes where Big Bronson Reed destroys everything, in the style of Braun Strowman in 2017, for example, when Braun Strowman was smashing a car or vehicles, or at least causing a huge ruckus, an XXL ruckus, I would say. Behind the scenes, all of this was impactful, and in the end, it was memorable, and that is what really gave an aura to Strowman at the time. Let's do the same with Big Bronson Reed, and for all these reasons, I truly believe he has everything it takes to be one of the next big stars of WWE, and who knows if, maybe not as soon as 2025, but perhaps in 2026, the main event of WrestleMania could be Braun Breaker against Big Bronson Reed. Who knows? In any case, what is certain is that they represent the future, and he will be one of the men to watch closely in WWE. You now know my opinion on Big Bronson Reed, who I believe should be one of the next big stars in WWE. Come and let us know in the comments if you also think he has enormous potential, or if, on the contrary, you are not convinced by him. Which other current wrestler do you think deserves a big push, in your opinion?
We can say that this topic raises a lot of questions. I hope you had a good time watching this video, and I invite you to stay in the paradise of wrestling to look at some other ones. See you right away.
And that's the bottom line, 'cause Stone Cold said so. What?